Listen to the best wrestling podcast in the world. Journey into Wrestling every other Wednesday on the Journey into Comics Network.
The following is a Journey into Comics Network production.
From the suburbs of Chicago and Illinois, this is the Puhr Report with your host, Andrew Puhr.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is episode 50 of the Puhr Report. Quite a milestone we're at here. And I'm joined today by a special guest. I'm joined by co-host of Podcastrophe, Tyler McLaughlin. How are you doing today, Tyler?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. It's kind of it's crazy to get to episode 50. I know you're not too far off from it now, too, because you got, 2 more episodes?
Yeah, this week will be episode 49, and then, next week we've got episode 50 coming up. We don't really have any plans, but a milestone nonetheless.
Yeah, and I think something's pretty crazy that I was kind of waiting to reveal on episode 50 is that episode 50 is actually the last episode of the Puhr Report. I'm not really going anywhere, but it's still weird to kind of close that chapter. I'm kind of going in a bit of a different direction. I think I told you ahead of time kind of what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So basically what's happening is the Puhr Report is going to split from basically one show that exists now into 2 shows. One show that'll still focus on the political news and exclusively that and things going on in the world. And the other thing will be entertainment news, which is more talking about TV shows, movies, just stuff like that, and probably having guests on to talk about kind of the goings-on in the world of, entertainment and all of that. So it'll be an interesting change, but it gives the audience a chance to, if you're sick and tired of political news, which I know some of us are, that you don't have to tune in every week to hear me talk about that and actually still get to listen to my show. So it's not too bad. It's probably, you're probably pretty sick of listening to all that political news. It kind of feels like it's inundated with Facebook and social media and on the TV, and basically anytime you turn on the news, it's pretty everywhere.
Yeah, I'm in a really weird place politically, and, I consider myself, for the most part, an anarchist, but I'm also very conservative, and I buy into a lot of liberal ideals at the same time. I'm just kind of a hodgepodge of political beliefs, and they contradict a lot, and, it makes me a little bit less credible at times, I think, when I'm for lack of a better term, debating people, because I really, on that note, I really don't like the term debate, especially when politics are involved, because if you and I are debating something and we have an audience, that audience is there to either be convinced by party A or party B. They don't really care about anything that's being discussed. They just want either party A or party B to pitch them something in a way that they like it and they can buy into it, and that's the belief system that they're going to go down. I love to have discussions. I love to have arguments, especially when they're not hostile. But I personally, I think one of the easiest and quickest ways that we can improve the political climate in the U.S. is just get rid of the political debates, especially during the presidential race.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think it becomes more of just spinning things into a button or a pre-formed statement that they've rehearsed many times over, and it's not really answering the question. They're just doing it to appease their audience who they're only playing to. They're not actually debating the topic at hand. They're like, well, that reminds me of this other thing I was talking about, which is this whole 10-minute speech about nothing related to the question asked.
Absolutely.
And then they'll get applause at the end, and you're like, that didn't help me at all.
Nope. And for a fact that there's people in that audience that are keying in on that, but they just conform and they agree and they applaud just like everybody else in the audience, and then they, it goes right back to the forging your own path versus the status quo that I talk about so much on Podcastrophe. To your initial point, I'm not really tired of the political news, because there is so much shit that you have to weed through to actually get to credible information and legitimate topics of discussion or debate or however you want to phrase it. What I am tired of is just the media as a whole. I don't care about Fox News. I don't care about CNN. I don't watch the news at all. If I find a reporter that I consider at least mildly credible, I will follow what they're reporting on, but that's about it. That's the extent of it.
Right.
And then
sorry.
No,
jumping on you.
And then I was going to say, of course, all the clickbaity stuff that we see on Facebook and the rest of social media. I mean, you can't, at this point in the age that we're in now, you cannot avoid the clickbait. It is everywhere, all day, every day.
Right. I mean, you scroll through, like, I have Facebook on my phone, I'll scroll through it and be like, there's all these random articles that have a headline that's like, what? And then you open it up and you're like, oh, that's nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's just, they picked a random line or spun it just enough to get you to be like, what is this going on?
Right.
And that's awful. And I feel like, that's why I feel like we're inundated with more, just because I feel like there's more out there now, and we're just a little more sensitive to it. We're just kind of seeing it pop up, and the same thing with the media. Every media has its own agenda. It's not sitting there. There's no one with a very unbiased. Everyone's going to have some kind of bias in what they're reporting to an extent. There's some that do it more than others, but that's why it's also ridiculous with the whole political party system, is that some people are so set with their own party that they'll vote top down. Like, I don't go to when I vote, I don't go there and just check the box of the party that I closely align to. I research the person, figure out what person, either party, what their personal values, what they've said, what closely aligns to myself, that I'm not going to be like, well, I'm not going to throw straight party lines. I think they shouldn't even have the party lines on the ballot, because some people just blindly look, DR, independent, I'm just going to check that box. Like, no, there's, like, my dad did, ran in local government and did some state, but because of the letter next to his name, he got dinged or helped through that. It's, no one really paid attention to what he actually voted on or what he's an advocate for. It was just, people voted the way they've always voted, and that they just voted straight party lines with certain things. And it's just not actually learning anything. That's how we get into these messes of party politics, which is just dumb in my opinion. If we just had no political party, people actually have to pay attention to what the person had to say and not just what party they're being represented by.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you know, you can be really cynical to take that further too, like I am most of the time. You know, it's not necessarily what party you're voting for; it's what corporation you're voting for at the time. You know, people like to throw the weight around or throw the oil and gas industry likes to throw their weight around and say, well, that they lobby politicians so much, that's why renewable energy, you know, can't be successful. And for the most part, they're not wrong. But most people don't realize that the modern medical industry lobbies politicians more than every other industry combined. Every major industry in the world doesn't put forth the same amount of money as the United States medical industry.
Yeah, I've seen that. It's crazy the amount of money they'll put for actual research development, how much they'll put just to better themselves with administrations, with elected officials, just to make sure nothing's going to hinder them with anything they decide to pursue. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that whole lobbying thing, it's ridiculous. Like, because I know all these elected officials are supposed to represent us, but they get bought and taken out and given little gifts here and there to try and push their corporate cause and not really go in there to represent us. Like, it takes you back to what it used to be hundreds of years ago when, like, being a politician was a part-time job and you went and had a regular job the rest of the year.
Yes, you didn't have a choice. You had to be a citizen for, you know, 3/4 of the year, and you were only a politician when they needed a politician.
Right. Like, that was the whole thing of being in session, because that's when you were there, that's when you were on the clock as a senator or a representative, whatever, and then the rest of the year you went back to your family and did your job and be a member of society. Not even know when the switch happened. It's just like, one day it's like, I'm just going to do this full time for the rest of my life.
Right.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. And like, you spoke of, like, you've, how you're kind of an anarchist and you have views kind of on both sides or all kind of across the spectrum when it comes to certain views about certain topics. Is that something that you've kind of developed on your own as you've grown up, with some of it based on, like, your parents being around and what their views are? Because a lot of stuff, like, growing up, you're kind of influenced by your parents and what they talk about and how their views are.
So growing up, especially, like most people, when you become a high school student is when you really start to label yourself. Oh, I'm either a Democrat or I'm a Republican, and I like the left or the right. That's when it, it's in its most simple aspects at that time. But that I think that's when most of us really start to get in, or start to want to get involved into politics. And when I was in high school, I was very, very left leaning. I was very anti-conservative, and then I went to college. I'm a college dropout, and I've always had a problem with the education system and the public education system, or, just the education system in general. I have a problem with it because it is so worthless. From K through graduate school, it is a joke. But, once I got to college and, I had to work, I was working full-time and going to school, and then I dropped out of college so I could work more. And, I've been in about 4 different major industries now, and every time I have a career change, it's like, okay, I need to reevaluate where I sit politically a little bit, because when I was in the construction industry, I was very, very conservative. And then when I went into the manufacturing industry, because of the management system that the company that I worked for ran, it started to be kind of a 50-50 split between left and right. And then the next manufacturing company that I worked for, I went ultra-conservative again because their values were so left-leaning. It didn't jive with me. And now I'm kind of back in, I'm a union electrician now, so now my views have to sway a little bit left-leaning, or the whole ideal of what gives me a paycheck is not, I either buy into that ideal a little bit, or why am I doing the job? Why do I want that as my career, So I just try to keep an open mind for the most part, because there is a shitstorm of false information and just strong weighted opinions being thrown around, very little fact a lot of the time. And I think anyone that doesn't do their due diligence and form their own opinions they're selling themselves short.
Right. I mean, we're all very much individuals, and if we, like you said, you kind of evolve with your thoughts every time. You kind of have to reevaluate with every stage of life, because no one's the same person they were even a year ago. Everyone has different life experiences that influence how their behaviors are. It's the same reason, like, people who grew up with, like, a religious upbringing, and then as they started their own person and not, like, a child of their parents, they started having their own thoughts and about all of that and questions beyond what they were just told. And it's kind of that same idea. Like, you have to kind of keep seeking the betterment of yourself and seeing, like, where you actually lie. Like I grew up, like, my father's very democratic, but he also has a lot of kind of conservative values that I grew up with, and I kind of go back and forth. And in college, the whole libertarian thing was kind of interesting, and then you kind of move on, and after you graduate and kind of make your own thoughts. And just, there's certain people where it's like the kind of the extremes of the left and right are always just constantly battling each other, and it's not worth it. It's not worth your stress to be angry about certain things like that when it's just got to just keep moving forward.
Right. At least attempt to move forward.
Right.
You don't always have to be making progress, but you should always be making the attempt to make progress.
Right.
Is the way that I look at it.
Yeah, otherwise you're just kind of standing still and not really... Because when you just become just deaf to other people's viewpoints is when it's just... We're just not progressing as a society.
Right. Well, we are in the age where my opinion is fact, and I don't have to hear your opinion. And that mindset is really, really aggravating to me, because I have this mindset that if you have a belief, I'm not going to try and change it. Number one, it's not my responsibility, and it's none of my business to try and change your beliefs, as long as your belief isn't, some of the, if you're a Nazi, okay, that's a problem.
Right.
That's a belief system that is a problem. But if you personally believe that women should have the right to choose to have an abortion, that is your belief. That is something that you believe to the core. I'm not going to be able to say anything in my life to change your mind because that's what you believe. Now, if you have an opinion that maybe they should, maybe they shouldn't, and I have a strong opinion one way or the other, and it might be the same, we can have a conversation and we can discuss and we can kind of work through stuff together and say, okay, well, maybe your opinion makes a little bit more sense to me,
Right.
But we're in the age where beliefs and opinions are so wound together, and everyone is so closed off to what anybody else is saying that it's like you said earlier, we're almost all just standing still as a society because we don't want to progress.
Yeah. Have you ever, I don't know if you've actually seen it, have you seen the image where it's like kind of like a cartoon and there's two people standing in front of like a painted number and it's a 6 if you're looking at it from the left and it's a 9 if you're looking at it right, and it says, just because I see, or just because where I'm standing does, like, I can't remember what the actual wording was, but it's like, just because you think you're right doesn't mean I'm wrong. But it's like, no, there's clearly a right answer to this question. It doesn't mean it was drawn in one space. It doesn't mean that just because, like, yes, you're looking at it from one side of it doesn't mean that's the right. That's just what you perceive as the right side.
And I'm glad you brought that up because I love that image, because there are people that will look at that image and argue about it. And what you said hits the nail on the head. Somebody wrote either a 6 or a 9 there. They might not have stated which one it is, but it is either a 6 or a 9. It is not both.
Right. It's just like one of those things like, yeah, and I've said like someone that comments like, yeah, that's their argument for to back up their view. I'm like, that's still not right. Like if I put like I can go up to a stop sign, put a circle around it and a line through it, and that means the stop sign's invalid. No, that's still a stop sign.
Right.
Just because I choose to ignore it, like that doesn't change anything.
You can't paint an apple orange and call it an orange.
Right.
It's still an apple.
Yes, it is what it is. So, I don't know. I did always find that one pretty interesting because that and the whole thing, I think you posted on Facebook or something the other day about the whole addiction as a disease and how all that going on. I kind of fell into this. I know it like came up like a week or so ago. I didn't really get the full backstory. I know the whole it's a choice, so it can't be disease and all that. I don't know if you have any. I can't remember what your exact point was about it.
So we are the most educated society in history. As a whole, worldwide, we are ultra educated. There is, and it kind of flabbergasts me because I'm sure there are people out there that don't know this, but the majority of people know that heroin is an extremely addictive substance. Okay?
Right.
Putting yourself in the position to stick that needle in your arm and shoot it up, you are... Now, the addiction to heroin might be a disease, but you chose to have that disease, basically. And that's a problem. Because people... My sister's a type 1 diabetic. She didn't choose to have diabetes. So we as a species are supposed to be moving forward, not standing still and not going backwards. Why are you electing to basically, ruin your life, ruin your body? Why are you giving yourself a disease for nothing?
Right.
So I have a really hard time with that. And, I will concede a little bit and agree that, based on your genetics, some people are more predisposed to addictive substances. Yeah, I'll agree that all day long. But the fact remains that the initial choice was there. And I saw this post surface again today, and there was somebody on that post saying, well, type 2 diabetics chose, but diabetes is still a disease. And that's fair. I mean, that's a fair point, but not all type 2 diabetics are 700 pounds and need a crane to get out of their bed. Right. Some people's pancreas just fails. That's a part of life, you know?
Right. I had a friend who had put their whole big post to tie into that about how people who like overeat and don't exercise and develop like type 2 diabetes, like that's a choice they made, but it's still disease that leads like heart disease or whatever and all that. But it's like, but you've seen the side effects. Like it's not the first time someone has had issues with heroin or other addictive substances. You know, going well into that there's a possibility. Like I've seen friends or I've seen people on the news and stuff that go really bad on that. Like there's other options that you don't have to be like, heroin's my only choice in this matter. Like you chose that. You went, picked it up, or you got it from someone. Like if you got to that point, you'd be like, oh, I should go seek help. There's people there. If you need to go to counseling or all that, like there's always another choice. Like it just seems that, it was a choice to do that. It may be a disease. People are genetically predisposed. Like I don't smoke because everyone in my family smokes, and I know it's something like if I do it, it's gonna get addictive. It's gonna be something that's gonna all be doing. It's something that, so it's just better to not even start it because you know it can lead to it. Or drinking, people who have genetically predisposed because everyone, the parents are alcoholic or whatever, all that. Mm-hmm. So it's just, go on.
There's an old man or an older guy that has kind of filled like the Mr. Miyagi type role in my life the last couple years. And when him and I would work together, he was kind of my mentor when I first started working. And whenever I would make a mistake or get really frustrated with something or complain about something or something that somebody else was doing, he would always say the phrase, "We all justify what we do." And for a long time it really frustrated me until I finally realized what he was keying in on. We all have a choice in everything that we do, and at that moment that choice is presented to us, we are either justifying the decision that we make or we are not justifying it and not making that decision. So that doesn't make it right by any means. That's not what he's getting at. So, I mean, if you wake up tomorrow and you're like, I think I'm going to try some heroin, you have justified that decision. You have opened the door to any of the consequences. Perfect example, my family is very predisposed to alcoholism. That is where I formed the opinion that addiction is not a disease, because that is something that you from birth until death, you can go your entire life without ever having a sip of alcohol. You're going to have a life nonetheless. You don't ever have to be exposed to it, or you don't ever have to choose to be exposed to it. So I choose not to drink at my house. I drink alcohol. I will go and party and have a good time with friends, but I will not drink at my home. Because if I come home every day and I drink every day, then eventually it will get to a point where I'll require that, because I'll associate drinking beer or whatever with being at home. Right. So I'm choosing not to open that door and go down that path. It's not a hard decision to make. I just don't drink when I get home. It's really easy.
Right. Like I've seen people who are like they'll only smoke while they're drinking or something. Like they'll only smoke like at a bar or something when they're with like a social environment. They choose to extend that because once you let it kind of infest your day-to-day life is when it becomes a problem.
Well, we're all creatures of habit.
Right.
I mean, that's a fact. So I totally agree.
Yeah, you just got to kind of try and section off the best you can. Like, they're saying, let's go, I'll only do this at this time. It's like, it's like, well, I'm only going to have, 2 extra helpings of this at Thanksgiving because it's Thanksgiving. Mm-hmm. It's not like, I'm not going to go eat a whole, half a turkey every day because that's craziness, even if it is delicious. But you got to kind of keep yourself, it's kind of a weird example, but it's kind of just keeping that pocket, something so it's not well, I get up and I have this and do this and that and then go on with my day, because that routine will eventually just become incorporated. It's like that's why it's so hard for people, like people who are trying to quit smoking, is that they've put it in so many facets of their day that they can't function without it. It's like, well, I always smoke while I'm driving, and now when I'm driving, I'm not smoking. I have this feeling, I have this anxiety. I need something in my hands. You get like an oral fixation. You need something to do, and some people pick it up by like holding like a toothpick, or always have a pen in their hand, or something to try and mimic that feeling or that muscle memory to try and get you over that hump that you're trying to get through.
Yeah. So to go along with that, in the early to mid 2000s, as far as the like personal health industry, there was a like slogan that was going around for a couple years that nothing is bad for you in moderation. So eat that donut, go kill a whole bucket of fried chicken. As long as you're not doing it every day, it's not going to affect your overall health. And that's not entirely false. It's not entirely true, because heroin can be bad for you in moderation. Cocaine can be bad for you in moderation. So I think that luckily that phrase got killed off pretty quick. But and it's kind of a cheesy way to look at it, but as far as all the personal decisions that we make in life, we're all standing in a long hallway. And every decision that we make, we're opening a door. And once you open that door, you have to accept everything that's on the other side. So on Thanksgiving, if you want to eat half a turkey, that is your prerogative. You can justify it and do it. But if you wake up the next day and eat another turkey and then another turkey and do it again, you have to accept the consequences, or you have to change your decision-making process and improve.
Right. It's a good point. Like, it's kind of that same thing. Like, yeah, like you said, every decision you make opens another door, and then everything that follows that. Like, I can choose to drive to work every day at 100 miles an hour. Mm-hmm. That's a choice I'm making. And whatever happens, I could easily get pulled over, get a ticket, whatever. I could hit someone. I could get in a major accident. But that's all a decision that's a result of choosing to do that one activity.
Absolutely.
Like, could be 8 times out of 10, nothing happens. I get to my point B without any issues, and I move on with my life. But there's those possibilities that you have to be prepared for when you make that decision.
Mm-hmm. And that's why I like this this topic so much, because it is so relevant in the political climate. And it's a little bit different of a tone, but if you're going to align with either party, you don't have to accept every decision that politician or that group of politicians makes. They can make decisions that you don't agree with. That doesn't make them a bad candidate or a bad group of people. Like, we as a species are so quick to judge, anyway. But whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, it doesn't matter. Not every decision that Donald Trump makes is bad. I'm not saying that every decision that he makes is good, but he has done some positive things. He's done a lot of negative things, and he's ran his mouth a lot, but not everything he has done is bad.
Right. Like, his presidency hasn't been a dumpster fire the way that some people describe it. Like, he's done a few things you're like, yeah, like any other president done it, I'm sure people would be praising that decision, but because they associate him with all of the stuff that's going on and the way he talks, they're like, oh, that's awful. Like, I'm pretty sure if you took, like, I remember someone saying, like, they took a quote, I remember, this was earlier in the school, someone in, like, a southern college was speaking at a graduation and said a quote that made sense and said it was by Donald Trump, and then it got cheers. They said, oh, I'm sorry, I misspoke. That's actually a quote by Barack Obama, and then got a bunch of boos, because people were just, like, that quote was still good. They liked it when it was one person, but that doesn't change how you felt. Like, just because I actually misspoke, it was supposed to be the other guy. Like, it's just that kind of a simpler example of that, but it's just, people get so, they focus on too many things about one specific person or one specific idea that doesn't help them going forward. Mm-hmm. It just kind of baffles me. Like, yeah, like, there's been things about since I've been following presidents, and since I've really paid attention since, like, the first election I really noticed, and when George W. Bush got elected, it was like the first election I actually paid attention to, and I was like 10 years old. But since then, like, there's things that those presidents have done that have been like, oh, that's actually really great. And there's like, oh, that's not so great. Like, I remember Patton Oswalt had a comedy special where he talked about that there's going to be a time where someone you like is like, oh, yeah, that's great. I really believe in that guy. But there's sometimes going to make you go, I guess that's not great or that's okay. But, it's a hard thing to defend. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're so wrapped up in the moment right now where, if you, and I don't walk around the street with a sign saying this is what my political beliefs are. There are people that are doing that right now, and it's to get attention or to kind of promote controversy and conflict. However they justify it is really irrelevant, but we are so wrapped up in the moment of this is who I am, and if you aren't this, then we have an issue here. We are a society. We need to coexist. We need to we're a melting pot of cultures, anyway. We need to just take all of the good ideas from every political party and just agree that, hey, these are all good ideas, and let's keep moving forward. That's kind of the theme of this episode.
Right.
Because with what we are, or the road that we're going down right now, the door that we've opened, we are 100% going backwards, and I don't know how anyone can support it.
Right. Like, I have no idea what's really going to come next. Like, we've got to a point where people, like, I've made the mistake of I've fallen into, like, Facebook comment trolls about a certain, like, news article, and people get to a point where they don't even care what the article's about. If you disagree with it, you're attacking them as a person, and they're just gonna let you have it for no good reason. You could present found logic and sense, and they're gonna just attack you with, like, making fun of you or something like that, or just saying you're crazy, you're left, or you're right, or whatever, and all of this, and just not even paying attention. Like, I feel like it's gotten to a point where just so negative. It's just negative, and it's just attacking people, and it's just, we're not even listening to what people are saying. It's just closing ourselves off again, which is, like you said, we're just standing still because we're not being open to this. And I feel like, I don't know if it's because what's going on in the political climate is just charging certain people's fears and what's going on and causing them to lash out, or it's feel like that certain people have voices that didn't have it before. I really don't know how it got to this point. It seems like people just got take everything so personally about what's going on globally.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's a combination of everything. I can have, strictly politics. I know for a fact that I can have a political conversation with you, and you and I are going to disagree on some things.
Right.
But I'm never going to take it personally. And most people don't have the ability to do that. They are so focused on me, this is what I think, and I don't really care what you think, but based on what you're saying, you are wrong and you're a monster. I hate that mentality. Right.
It doesn't help anything. It's not constructive. It's just criticism for the sake of criticizing something. Mm-hmm. I feel like, if we had a very long conversation about some specific topic, we'll both probably come out of it thinking a little bit differently. We might not change our exact opinion of it, but we might be like, oh, I can kind of see his point, or I can see his side, and that's how it should be. We should all be able to have a conversation about something and grow from that conversation. It shouldn't be something like, you see people, restaurant religious, basically yelling at each other for an hour, and you're like, they both just got harder and harder into their own opinion and didn't even give an inch.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's just frustrating sometimes. It's just like, if we all just listened a little bit, we'd be a lot better off.
Right. So, based on where we're at right now, let's just say in the next decade, do you think that we're actually going to make any change? Do you think that we're actually going to move forward instead of standing still?
I don't know. The part of me that's an optimist thinks yes, but I feel like it's just going to be the case of, like, I feel like it's every 4 years, every 8 years, it's people trying to change or reverse what the other person before them did. So I feel like the whole, like, if Trump gets elected in 2020 and is president till 2024, I feel like the next president, which most likely going to be Democrat, because that seems how everything shifts. It goes Republican, Democrat, and down the line. It's just going to be them criticizing what the previous president did and seeing what they're going to change. And all it does is just kind of, it goes up and down. It just balances us out. So we're not really progressing in one direction. At least that's my view. Like, I'd like to say we'll get to a point, because there's certain things that have gotten better. Like, I know the unemployment is down massively, and like the GDP is up and all of that. That's all that stuff that gets just thrown in your face about things that are going well and all of that. But the debt's going up and all that. So I'd like to say, like, personally, I hope things get better. Like, I don't know at this point. Being a realist, probably make it a little bit better. We might move a little bit forward, but I feel like we're going to move a few steps back and a few steps forward. It's just going to be, there's going to be a lot of give and take in this. I don't know how you feel about it.
Exactly the same way.
Good.
For most of my life, I've been a pretty cynical person. The last, especially after I became a parent, I'm a little bit more optimistic about a lot of things, and I'm starting to become more of an optimist as far as the political climate goes. Unless we make drastic changes from the citizen level up, I don't think that we're going to move forward consistently. I think it's just going to be the constant tug of war. We're going to have a Republican for 4 to 8 years, and then we're going to have a Democrat. Exactly what you said is what I would have said if you asked me the question.
Going back to like 2016 with Trump's things, like, he wanted to drain the swamp. You wanted to get rid of the entrenched bureaucrats and politicians that were not, like, that makes sense to me. There's people that are sitting there doing the bare minimum, collecting quite an extensive government salary plus lobbying money, and bringing nothing new to the table. They're just punching the clock, doing the bare minimum to get by, and then retiring and getting the pension and the full benefits and all of that.
Right.
Like, yeah, those guys should go. Like, that's why I think term limit should be a set thing. Like, you can be a senator, congressman, whatever, 2 terms, 3 terms, then that's it. Go do something else for the rest of your life. You shouldn't be able to become a senator at 35, retire at 60, 70, and then get all that money that you've accrued that whole time, plus a pension for the rest of your life, and then become a lobbyist or whatever. Like, there's people who lose an election, become a lobbyist, keep the same connections, and then make like 10 times as much money, and are just not even helping anything.
Right. That brings me to one of the next questions that I had for you. Do you think we should lower some of the age requirements for certain offices?
Correct. I think it's, what is it? I know 35 is president, but is it like 30 for like senators and representatives?
I will actually pull it up real quick.
Yeah, that's, I think, I remember there was I went to college in Puhr. I went to Bradley University, and I remember while I was there, during the 2012 election, a bunch of the Republican candidates came there. Like, Mitt Romney came to my school, and like Rick Santorum and all those guys, like the front runners on the Republican side in 2012 came. And there was a representative there that I actually really liked the way he got elected. Like, stuff after that became kind of messed up, but like, he was still in high school, or he was like in a community college or something, and got elected. He campaigned really hard as a write-in candidate and got elected, like, I think it was, I don't think what it's actually called. It's like the school board president.
Okay.
Like, while he was like fresh out, like he just like roamed the streets and got like signatures and all that and got votes and made a big stand, and then he became worked his way up to like a state rep and all that, and became a U.S. like representative, like one of the youngest they've had, and then made the mistake of kind of like embezzling money and all of that. So, but like his projection up to that point was like, that's how it should be. Like, I think age shouldn't be a requirement if you're motivated and if you have good ideas,
and qualified.
Like, there's nothing to say, like, you or I, even though we're not near the age that, like, the minimum age requirement to get elected, if we have good ideas and we want to show that we have genuine, like, feelings and thoughts and a motivation to kind of bring this country forward, I don't see why a number should disqualify us. Because there's people, like, why should someone who does nothing and then is all of a sudden just 35 more qualified to run for that position than I am if I've been doing all of these things up to that point?
So,
like,
go not to interrupt you here, but I've got it pulled up, and I actually was wrong on a couple of these numbers. So a person must be 35 or over to be president or vice, 30 or over to be a senator, and 25 or over to be a representative. I didn't realize it was that low to be a representative. I thought it was a little bit higher than that.
Right, I thought they were both 30.
This is saying 30 and 25, so.
Okay, so that's not bad. I think 25 seems reasonable. Like, I know, like, we saw, I remember it became big news when there was that Stoneman Douglas school shooting, and then a lot of those kids that were involved with that became very much political activists. I don't, some of that stuff, there's going to be disagreement points on that, but, like, they became very politically motivated. They've been able to kind of crowdsource and be able to kind of bring thoughts on that and just, like, fade into the woodwork like a lot of news stories that come about.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, like, if those guys, like, when they're in their early to mid-20s, if they want to pursue political office, there shouldn't be an age requirement that stops them.
I totally agree.
Because, like, if I go down to, like, Joe Schmo down the street and he's 35 and it's like, hey, you should run, like, there should be more to it than that. There shouldn't be... But I think that's a good point. There shouldn't really be an age restriction. President's a little bit trickier. It's the same reason, like, I remember getting asked, it's kind of a side question, but I remember getting asked this by a relative, if you think a president should have prior military experience
Absolutely.
to get elected.
100%.
Okay. Like, I said not necessarily. I think it's helpful because I think before you're technically like the commander-in-chief of the military, you should have some kind of bearings. Like, I think that you should have some kind of... I know it seems to be a lot of, like, lawyers and senators and stuff. They're just regular guys. But we've had a lot of people with military experience. Like, I think it's just, like, the last handful that really haven't. There's I don't know what the exact number of, like, people who don't have military versus... I don't know if you know off the top of your head.
I don't know off the top of my head. I think... So one of the issues that I have with politics in the United States is to be appointed a position in a cabinet or as an advisor, whatever, you don't really have to be qualified for that position. And so to kind of put that in perspective, the person that's in charge, like the Surgeon General or the health and welfare, I don't remember what that one is actually called, that title is, but those people should be, if you're going to be in charge of the state of health in the United States, you should be a doctor or at least a scientist.
Right.
And a lot of times that's not, I mean, they're not, the resume that they have is not really relevant to the position that they hold. So, and it would make more sense to me if you're the commander-in-chief of the military and you're in charge of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, you should probably be a military person.
Right. That just makes sense because you need to kind of know what's going on, like what you're actually, like what you mean. Like you need to know what's going to happen when you say do this, what the next 10 steps are. Like you're just like, you could say, yeah, go do this. And you realize that they're gonna delegate that down. They're gonna say they're gonna send troops. They're gonna send whatever to go do something. You realize you're sending people to go do something that might be costly to their lives or costly to the global scheme of things. Like you could say, all right, we need to go take out this base, or we need to go infiltrate this, or whatever. Like taking it back to like when they did the raid to capture and kill Osama bin Laden, that was, he said, all right, that's where he is, go get him, knowing that these many things go wrong. He's never been the person on the receiving end of that.
Correct.
And I feel like sometimes people who would have that experience, like I have family that are in the military, I've never been a part of that, so I can't really speak for it, but I know it probably would have been a lot different. Like you would probably have a couple extra thoughts in your head if you've been on the receiving end, like you know what it's like to be on the front lines or being overseas or being in an unfamiliar place and trying to do what you've been commanded to do.
Well, I think just the overall respect for the military would be a little bit better. I'm not telling anybody how to think by any means, but I stand by what I said. The title that I was talking about is the Secretary of Health and Human Services. That person should be a doctor. The Secretary of Labor should be someone who has actually worked in the United States and not been a career politician. The Secretary of Agriculture should be someone who has worked in the agricultural industry, not just a politician that has been slightly educated on the ag industry. So,
right. At that same point, like you say, like I know you've kind of made your points known about how you feel about like the educational systems. Do you think like the Secretary of Education should be a teacher, an administrator of a school, a principal, like something had that kind of in their background?
Yes.
Because I feel like shouldn't be someone like, I know some candidates or some people will pick someone for a position to garner favor because it's like, oh, I'll give you a spot in my cabinet because I know you'll bring me these 20 votes from other senators to help get my agenda across. Like,
right.
You have no rhyme or reason. Like, I can't remember, like, in the current administration, like Ben Carson, I think, is like a heart surgeon or something, and he's in a like housing, like Secretary of like housing and
I think that's right.
But it's like he would make a better sense to be like a Surgeon General or Health and Human Services. Like that's something he has experience with because he obviously went to medical school and he worked in a hospital and all that. Like that would make sense. Or how this current Secretary of Education never went to a public school in her life and never taught, it doesn't equate. Like they may have great ideas, but I feel like you need that extra level of being actually involved in what you're the secretary of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there is a caveat to what I said. If you're a qualified individual, then you should be considered. It goes back to the age requirements to hold political office. What we were talking about a little bit ago. If you are a qualified individual, you should be considered just the same as anybody else. But if you are slightly less qualified and you don't have the job experience, and when I say job experience, I mean job experience in the industry or whatever or what have you, the most qualified people should be holding these cabinet positions, and I don't think that they are.
Right. It's almost like in. Sorry, didn't mean to try to jump on
No,
it, but
you're
it's
good.
like the same kind of idea of like, I know like what happens a lot is when a new president takes control, a lot of these previous positions get not quite fired, but they get let go, and then they bring their own people in. Some of these positions should even be tied to a new president getting elected. Like, if they're qualified and they're doing the job, it should almost be something that's just, it stays until you kind of move on. Like, I know you kind of want someone that kind of is of your agenda, but if these people are qualified, they shouldn't be dropped 4 years into what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
I know sometimes, like, deputies and other people kind of get jostled around a little bit, but still, I feel like it shouldn't be something that, like, resets every 4 to 8 years.
Well, and, to kind of to hit this home even more, like, the United States Secretary of Veterans Affairs is the most perfect example for me. We like to see we don't like to see it, but we see all the media talking about, how many unemployed veterans we have and homeless veterans and how many people die every year waiting on the list at the VA seeking medical care that they can't get because they can't afford it out of pocket.
Right.
Just looking through the list of the last couple decades of the appointed cabinet members holding that position, very few of them are veterans.
Really?
Yep.
They're just regular government bureaucrats that just got picked for that role?
I'm not going to say very few of them. There is a large amount that were not veterans.
Oh. Isn't the current one, or like the previous one, weren't they a veteran?
Peter.
I don't remember for sure, but I think I remember seeing something like, if it wasn't, I know there's been like 2 under the current administration, but I think one of them was or is, or I don't know. And it does make sense. It should be someone who's a veteran. They've been through that or have friends that are in that same boat. Like, it's the same thing being a representative of your area. It's the same reason why if I elect a representative, I'm in Illinois, if I want him to represent Illinois. I want him to represent the people in the state where they're going. It's as simple as that. Like, you want them to be representative of what they're supposed to be representing. Like,
right.
if they're the Secretary of, like, Health and Human Services, yeah, exactly. It should be from the medical field. They should be a doctor or a nurse or something in that field. Or it shouldn't be someone who's like, it's like even as simple as, like, the people who are, like, senators who get, like, appointed to committees, like the armed, I'm trying to think of some of the committees now. But it's like budgeting and the military and all that. Like, they should have people that served, or they have people who are accountants or financial based, and, like, just to represent those people. They shouldn't just be, oh, now I got to spend all this time learning how to do this. They should be able to jump in, ready to go and ready to do their job.
Right.
I think we've had a really good discussion on this. There was a kind of couple other things I think I had noted here.
Go ahead.
I guess one thing I kind of want to know, I had this written down, I'm just kind of curious, it's kind of a random question, what grinds your gears? Like, what kind of gets under your skin that you kind of see? I know we kind of touched on it with a few things, but are there things that, like, it just bothers you every time you hear it and it just hasn't kind of gone away?
That Trump is a racist. You know, if we're gonna stay strictly political, that Trump is a racist. I have never seen anything. I'm not a racist. I can say with 100% assurance that I am not a racist. I have not seen any convincing evidence that Trump is a racist. That bothers me.
So, people who are convinced that Trump is a racist.
Yep.
And just, like, I feel like people get kind of hung up on one statement or one thing and just take it to the complete extreme. Like, I remember as early as, I think, this morning or yesterday, Trump had a tweet about LeBron James and something with, he makes, some other guy seem smart, and then I like Mike, meaning, like, Michael Jordan. And, like, people saying that means Trump is a racist. You're kind of taking what he said to, like, a whole nother level. He's just saying he doesn't like LeBron James. He's a Michael Jordan fan. And, yeah, he said that, like, he makes someone else hard, but he kind of says that about a lot of people. That they're not as smart or not as... I don't think there was really a racial connection to that statement.
No, his actual tweet was, LeBron James was just interviewed by the dumbest man on television. He made LeBron look smart, which isn't easy to do. I like Mike. That doesn't reference the color of his skin at all.
Right.
I have a problem with racism as a whole anyway. Like most people should. We're all just people. Just start being people and stop separating ourselves.
Right. The color of our skin was all in a relation to what area in the world we grew up in. Like, you can look at it. People closer to a hotter environment have a darker skin to deal with the sun.
Yeah, it's
all levels of
melanin,
not melanin in our skin.
Yep, that's
and
all. A
lot of us are Eastern European. We're in the winter climates. That's why we're pale. People in like Mexico and southern states and still like the southern part of the world have a slightly tanner skin just to deal with that level. That's all it is. Mm-hmm. It's all just based on where our ancestors grew up and how we kind of evolved.
Yeah. You know, as far as other things go, people... I have this opinion that being ignorant is not an excuse to make poor decisions, and it's a really bad way to say it, and I haven't found a better way to kind of convey the idea that I have in my head. Not everyone has the ability to be educated.
Right, I would agree with that.
But it is all of our responsibilities to educate ourselves. I have this thing where, and you know, some would say, well, you're addicted to your cell phone. Throughout the day, whenever I have free time, I am on my phone trying to learn something. Every day I try and learn something. So now with technology being the way that it is, we have access to information, on a level that no one has ever had. You can't make the excuse now that you didn't have access to education because now you've got it. You can go to Walmart and buy a cell phone for like $40.
Right. Or you can go to a library and use their computer and just do it's not the middle of BC where a class of people just didn't learn how to read.
Right.
There's people who, since the moment they left high school, have never read a book. Yep. Some people, don't like to read, or they only read fiction or whatever. More power to you. But, I like history. So I have, a full bookcase of books on old U.S. history, some world histories. And, I crack those, I read those. I have audiobooks. I'm listening to those when I'm driving to work and stuff. It's just, I don't know why people sometimes just hit a point I'm just done learning now. I don't get that. Or they'll just be what I learned up to this point is enough. No, we should constantly be trying to better ourselves. Just because we're done with school or we're done with this or we're settled into our job, we don't need to learn anything else. Our job is now routine. Mm-hmm. We do it day in, day out. You're not done. People from even 20 years ago, 30 years ago, would smack us around for the amount of stuff that they didn't have access to because of the time that we do.
Yeah, absolutely.
We put someone on the moon with a technology that was a tenth as powerful as what we have in our pocket that we use to use Snapchat.
Right.
It's ridiculous. And I don't know. I agree. That's something that's kind of, it's so easy to learn something new. You could easily go to Wikipedia and hit just a random button and read the article that it's about. You're going to learn something with 2 clicks, and you're going to scroll and learn something.
And if you spend about 5 more minutes, you can decide whether or not what you actually read is just true, or is true or not. I mean, you put forth a little bit more effort, and then you can say, okay, this is well written, and the sources are cited, and this is a reputable author, and these people that are involved in this industry or this topic are backing this. Okay, this is more than likely correct. I have just learned something. And It's amazing to me how many people every day just don't.
Right. I remember seeing at one point, people thought the Titanic was just a movie. It was not based on anything. And just how do you... that baffles me that someone's what? It was an actual event. It was a moment in history. It wasn't a fictional story someone made in a movie.
Right.
What other movies are basically, if you do just a hair of research, do the bare minimum, you would learn so much. But some people are just oh, it is what it is. No, it's just...
Yeah, that is an important tragedy in our history. We should know that. And I'll kind of finish this one up with the education system. We go to school to learn how to be statistically, how do I want to say it? Statistically good, I guess. We're basically pumping up statistical numbers. You are there to learn how to take tests and follow commands, and that's about it. Right. Until you get to college, and then you can kind of forge your own path. But either way, it's still the same thing. At least in my experience.
Right, high school, really just, you studied to take a test on what you learned, and then you immediately forgot it. It was basically how most school went. Mm-hmm. And then you took a standardized test, which is supposed to be how much you learned that year. And you took pre-tests and all that stuff, and then you get out and you're what did I... people, there's no class that'll teach you, how to balance a checkbook, how to change a flat tire on the side of the road, how to change your own oil. There's so many things that, it'd be good to have, life skills that aren't taught. We're just taught, yes, I chose a science major in college, so I use a lot of this stuff. People, it's well, I'm never going to use, calculus. Yeah, I use calculus a little bit. Not near to the extent of I studied, but still, I touch on it. like, yes, now we have, like, calculators in our phones, so we don't really have to memorize multiplication tables anymore. But still, like, we shouldn't be studying for these tests. Like, we need to be... I know part of school is to kind of get a sense of society and kind of a growth as a community, because sometimes we get exposed to a lot more while we're in school with people from different backgrounds all in one place of the same age and that whole thing. But
you can take that a step further. I mean, so just in the general courses that you took throughout, I'm going to say middle school through high school, how much did you talk about World War One?
In U.S. history, and that was basically it. Like,
we didn't talk about World War One more than 2 days in my U.S. history class. Some of the most important advancements in our civilization came out of that war, and most people don't know anything about it at all, other than it took place in Europe and Germany was bad.
Right. I think some textbooks probably have it as like a chapter.
Yep, that's about
that. Like 20 pages.
We legitimately spent 2 days on it. That's it. 2 class periods.
Then moved on to the next war,
and then no. Well, I think we went on. We just skipped World War II completely and went straight to like the '60s era.
Like, I understand, like, history. They can't go into fine detail without being like a class on World War I. But still, like, you should, if there's something that's like that important, they should focus at least a couple weeks on it. Like, It's not saying much. I know, because 2 class periods is, what, like an hour and a half?
We'll just say 2 hours.
Right. But, like, that's not nearly enough. Like, people have written thousands and thousands of books on World War I and just certain aspects of World War I. Like, there's so much information out there that you can expose yourself to that that's one of those things, like, I don't know why that's more important than, like, oh, you need to memorize the Gettysburg Address. Like, yeah, it's the Gettysburg Address. Do I really need to memorize it? Like, is that important for me at this point in time to spend hours reading words over and over again until they mean nothing, until I can just recite it? Like,
so, and the reason I brought World War I up, one of the most important advancements that we made as a civilization came out of that war, and it was mobile X-ray machines.
Really?
Yep.
I don't... Yeah, my World War I history knowledge is not great, so I actually didn't know that. So that's something I learned today, which is kind of cool.
Marie Curie, who was a French woman, actually came up with the technology. Because at the time, the X-ray machines were about the size of like a small bus.
Yeah.
So we improved our overall health as a civilization because of something that somebody did out of necessity of war.
That's how a lot of advancements came, is out of a necessity through either war or, like, the space race was another thing that was kind of fueled a lot of advancement just because of there was an end goal that we had to meet and we had to try and find any way of getting to that point.
Right.
And I feel like that's kind of something else. Like, you need almost like an event to spur advancement. And I can't even imagine without X-ray technology, kind of, like, I've had X-rays done. You probably have had X-rays done, probably plenty. And even as simple as, like, you go to the dentist once a year, and sometimes they'll just put those things, take X-rays of your mouth to kind of know that, hey, there's something going on here, or like, oh, I have a broken bone. Like, they're not just going to cut. All right, let's just cut this out. So y'all pull the muscles away and see what we're working with and trying to fix it. Like, they actually, like, oh, there's a break here, and let's just put a cast on it. Like, yeah, that's definitely a piece of technology that we're lucky that she was able to crack. Because who knows how long it would have taken if there wasn't a war going on, if there wasn't something that spurred that.
You can go even simpler with it. Tampons. Tampons were an innovation that came out of World War I. You know, sanitary napkins.
Really?
Yep.
I'm learning a lot today. I didn't even... Well, I never really cared to learn about the origin of tampons, but that's also kind of interesting. Yeah. I love learning things.
They were originally designed as a type of field bandage.
like something you could, something that would just be absorbed, they could wrap around a wound that would keep it until they could get to a second destination to get the work done on it.
Or plug a bullet hole kind of thing. That's
the right size, and if it swells up, it prevents further blood from leaching out. It kind of puts a plug in where you. And then we can actually use this for other things. Mm-hmm. That's really cool. I love that. I think one other thing I saw that was interesting that I don't even know if you've done any research on it is that remember this big thing that's kind of going on now is that whole thing with this 3D printed gun. Have you heard about that?
Yeah.
I talked to people. It's yes, you can print a gun, but it's not gonna work for very long. 'Cause you're gonna get a couple shots off, and then it's gonna tear itself apart. Is what I've kind of gathered from my little knowledge that I have on the topic.
People don't take into account all the stress that happens to that piece of machinery when a bullet is fired out of it. So the plastic that you use to 3D print is not made. You don't have the ability to 3D print something that's going to be able to withstand maybe more than 2 shots.
Right. It's plastic that you can it's a simple piece of plastic that's not going to be able to stand the heat, all of the strain, all the stress. Like you said, it's gonna break apart. It may break up that first thing of fire and explode in your hand.
Yep.
And people are like, oh, this is gonna change it because they're not gonna be detectable on airplanes and stuff. Also, someone needs to buy a decent enough 3D printer to actually even come across with that.
It's very expensive.
And you still need a firing pin, and you probably need some other mechanism that you can't print those pieces, right?
Right.
So it's not like someone can go there and be like, someone's not gonna be able to go down the street and be like, oh, they can't go to a Kinko's and I'm gonna print a gun and go now rob everyone at the King. It's
you know how all the Walmarts have photo printer stations in them now. We don't have the 1 hour photo places, but now we have the print your own photo stations. I just had an image in my head of somebody walking in Walmart to get a gun printed. They're standing in line. There's 40 people standing in line. Come on, this guy's been here forever. Yeah, it's just there is so much going on in our society that's almost like science fiction-esque. Flip open 1984 and then just laugh at some of the shit that's going on. It's not something that I'm worried about.
Right.
Because
it's more of it's a flashy headline more than anything.
It's clickbait, like everything else.
And then it's enough that it's also a distraction. It's getting people to focus on that than important things that are actually going on.
Right.
Which I feel half time something serious happens, another thing that sounds more serious than it is comes out of nowhere to oh, well, and diverts half the population's attention for a few days until they forget about what the original thing they were worried about was.
Yep.
So it's oh, there's this going on over here. Someone's hey, look, something shiny. That's basically how clickbait is.
We're just following the shinies.
Oh, man. Yeah, I think we're going on about an hour, a little over an hour now. Anything else that you want to talk about while you're on the show? It's kind of the little finale that we're having, but we're having a really great conversation. I feel like I can talk to you for a few more hours, but I'm sure we don't want to be talking for another hour here. I don't know if there's anything that you had that you were talking about as we kind of were talking about doing this show together.
I've got a good one to kind of leave off with, or to end with.
Okay.
Do you ever think that we will legitimately be able to remove money from politics?
Ooh. Do you mean can you further elaborate on that? Money is in... Yeah, go get a little more detail on that.
So, will we ever be in a place where the politicians are actually representing people and not just representing whoever is giving them the most amount of money?
Really, I don't think so. I think there's always, even if we get rid of, we put into law, there's no more lobbyists, or lobbyists are no longer allowed to donate money, they're going to find ways to do... It might not be money. It might be things that you can't document, or they'll be oh, you just got this random car or this piece of property that you don't that's off the book somewhere. Like, there's always going to be something of value that they're going to represent. I think even if you took a dollar value out of the equation, there's still going to be something in its place that's going to sway someone one way or the other.
Okay, so the second part of that question is, and I don't disagree with you a bit, and that's why I asked this question, why should we continue this political system that we have?
I think it kind of goes back to that saying. I feel like it's not necessarily how I feel, but I feel like there's a saying that has, like, if it's not broken, don't fix it. But I feel like we have a very broken system, but no one has suggested something alternative that's willing to change. It's the same reason, like, we haven't converted from to the metric system, because I feel like no one's presented, like, a easy way to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, easy way, like, because I think the scale of which we're talking about, like, you can't, as much as it would make the most sense, you can't just reset everything to square one. You can't just blow up everything and start over.
Mm-hmm.
As much as we would like to, and how much I think it would help a lot because the way the government started, the way everything kind of came together, was all in the minds of guys hundreds of years ago who didn't foresee a future that we have now.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like a lot of the situations we have, like with the amendments and with all of this, is based on a knowledge at one point in time, and the fact that I think we do need to get away from kind of because I feel like it is a flawed system, or there needs to be some more checks and balances, because I agree it's not exactly working. It's working to a point, but I feel like it could be better, but no one has presented a system and a means to get to a new way of doing things.
I like it.
Like, I would love to be able to, like, to say, all right, we're like effective, like, January 2020, we're going to start a new form of government. Like, I remember my dad was in this weekend because we were doing some stuff, and they're currently voting on going from, like, a mayoral type local government to a city management level government. And it's just like those things, like, and that's becoming a lot more trouble than it sounds. And and I feel like if you took that to a national level, it's not like it's going to be a nightmare. It's going to take years. It's not something that could be as simple as we're going to set a date and do it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'd love if we could. I feel like there's a better idea out there, and I feel like someone just needs to suggest it. But I feel like people are so set in their ways that no one in power now is going to vote to change it.
Okay.
And getting to that point, like, if someone ran and got elected and had that in their head, something's going to block them from doing that, and they're going to just give up, and it's just going to keep going.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. How about you?
I think if we tried to reset and go to square one, it's not gonna. Definitely in the short term, it's not going to benefit anybody, because, the global economy is going to collapse. If the United States fails, the global economy is going to collapse. I mean, that might not be true, but that's the way that it makes sense in my head. Really, the only, it's not as radical as an idea as you would think, especially coming from me, because I have a lot of radical ideas sometimes. But say effective January 1st, 2019, all current politicians in Washington, D.C. no longer have a job. We already have a person selected for every position, and not to give Trump any props here, but you legitimately drain the swamp. You purge all of them. Now, I'm not saying kill them in the streets. They just don't have a job anymore. Right. They have to be citizens and do their own thing. We basically have an election that's not an election, and we say, okay, this is your shot. All the people that are taking the place, you either do a good job or we're going to replace you. It's an industry like anything else. That's the way that it makes sense in my head.
Right. Sometimes you have to clear out the deadwood, so to speak, to kind of get some new ideas in there.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, I kind of like what you brought up there, because there was there was a show it's canceled now, but there's a show I liked called Designated Survivor. I don't know if you ever saw like the preview for it.
I watched the pilot episode, and then I do not have time to watch like consistent TV series. I just don't have the time.
I understand. It's hard to keep up with. Like, I wouldn't, like, there's shows that, like, I'll watch the pilot, I'm like, oh, this sounds really great, but then it's like, I find like 5 shows that I like, and I'm like, I can't sit home and watch 5 hours of TV in a week. Like, I have things I got to get done. Like, it doesn't make sense. But like, so like I'll catch up on like backlog stuff. But that was one of the shows I kind of kept with. Like, I end up getting like 5 episodes behind. Then I'll binge it on one random day. But it was an interesting because it basically you watch the pilots. You know, it's basically State of the Union. Everyone was in the Capitol, but all the movers and shakers in political office in DC were there except like one person. Then it blew up. So basically, they had to find everyone. Like, they had to bring all new people in, like people who would never had this. It was kind of a reset. You kind of got to see kind of how that evolved. And you had people, like, you had some former politicians kind of come back, but you had a lot of fresh blood, and you got to get a lot of new ideas, and it made sense. Like, I don't think definitely don't need something extreme as that, but I think that would make sense. Like, the same thing as, like, doing, like, it would be a little bit shaky at first, because you have a lot of people who have no idea what's going on. There's going to be a learning curve that'll need to take place. Mm-hmm. But I think if we can prepare for that, I think it would be great, because you definitely, it's kind of that whole thing of like, the whole thing of like, when you cut that off a snake, 2 heads come back or something like that. Mm-hmm. But if you just dice it all up into pieces, then you kind of can definitely bring a lot of newness. I'm sorry, my metaphors are kind of failing me today, but you kind of get what I'm saying.
I totally understand what you're saying.
But I think that would be nice. Like, it's the same reason, like I said earlier, like, stopping a term, like, yeah, you can run again, but you can only run, like, 2 times, and that's it. It's like the same reason, like, they can only have 2 terms of a president, because otherwise we'd have presidents just keep staying in office forever. Like, we could still have, I'm trying to think, like Bush Sr. could still be president for, like, if that was the case. Like,
mm-hmm. But we would have a king and not a president.
Right, and, like, we almost had that for a minute. Like, they were ready to make Washington king and have that be, like, and we would have a very different world right now if that was the case. Mm-hmm. But I think 2 terms are, like, a decade. Like, you get 10 years, and then after that, we need new ideas. And if everything is staggered like that, then there's always going to be someone new, and you can never be reelected. Like, that's it. You need to go home, go back to your state, go back to wherever you came from, get a normal job, and like, and make it so it's like you don't have these benefits of this stuff like after you're done. Like, you get your 10 years, you get paid, and then that's it. Go back to your career what you had before this. Mm-hmm. Like, no one should go to school to be a politician. Like,
absolutely.
That is not something that should be okay.
Well, that's not the way that it was. That's not the way that it was written, and that's not the idea that it was. And
right.
And you know, anybody can make the argument, you know, as far as the Constitution and everything goes, that's not the society that we live in today, and that I'll agree that's fair. But there should be no such thing as a career politician.
Right. Like, you should have higher aspirations. Like, a politician might sound good on paper, but there's something that you could better do with your time than to do something like that for the rest of your life. You need to make way for someone else. Mm-hmm. Like, it should always be somewhere you get your moment to shine. You get your time to put your own thoughts in that'll go in the major cog of the political atmosphere there, and then let someone else have their turn.
Absolutely.
It's like a merry-go-round that we're going on. You get off, someone else gets on, and they take it their way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's really awesome. I think that's a great way to kind of end the episode for this week. I think we've had a lot of great conversations. I've learned a lot. You've probably learned a lot. It's a good way to kind of cap off 50 episodes of the Puhr Report, and I'm not really going away. Like I said, I will be back with 2 other shows that'll be, one will be still very similar to this, and one will be a little more fun, a little more lively, and not talking about what's going on in the world, and some people probably will appreciate that. Mm-hmm. But I really want to thank you for coming on here. It's been a great night.
Thank you for having me. We've been talking about having me on as a guest since, like, I don't know, pretty much like right as soon as I started Podcastrophe. So I've been looking forward to this for a long time.
Right. I think I've been like since I listened to Podcastrophe once you came on, and I was like, I really want to like have a conversation with him. Like we've talked like off the cuff on like Messenger or like when we have like our little group conversations, but this has been great. I feel like we were able to go into a different area that like if I was like I guess on Podcastrophe, it probably would have been a different conversation altogether. But like I really like how this went, and this has been awesome, and I definitely want to have you on again in the new show. So,
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, but I think that'll do it for this week's show. Thank you all for listening to episode 50. I will be back next week with a newer show and a newer format, so definitely stay tuned for that. Thank you again, Tyler.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, you guys all have a great week.